Today we're looking at Psalm 62. Do you know the wonderful hymn, All My Hope on God is Founded, by Neander, one of the great German hymn writers of the 1600s, possibly my favorite period of hymn writing. He also wrote praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. But All My Hope on God is Founded, which fell into disuse really and was rediscovered in the second half of the 20th century and is still very popular, seems to have been based pretty firmly on this psalm, Psalm 62. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall never be shaken. That's the first two verses. And then you'll find they're repeated nearly, almost exactly, in verses 5 and 6. For God alone my soul waits in silence, for my hope is from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. There are little subtle differences between the two settings, verses 1 and 2 and verses 5 and 6. And the translations don't always bring them out. But the second bit, verses 5 and 6, is just a bit more emphatic than the first. For God alone, my soul, wait in silence. It's a command to the soul. And then in verse 6, I shall not be shaken. We shall not be moved, that sort of sense. What's going on here? It's a psalm of David, and David has learned to trust God absolutely. That there's trouble going on here in verses 3 and 4. How long will you assail a person? How long will you batter a victim, all of you, as you would a leaning wall, a tottering fence? Their only plan is to bring down a person of prominence. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. Those who always want to attack others, those who want to attack others in leading roles, those who tell lies and curse instead of blessing. Those people are very difficult. How do we deal with them? How do we deal with those who always criticize and batter? The answer is go to God and find God alone in the silence. From him comes salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall never be shaken. Sometimes rightly we depend on others and we lean on others and we need others' help and support. And God gives us other people for that very purpose. Wonderful. Sometimes, and David's experience bears this out, you just need to go to God himself alone. There's a wonderful story in part of the journeyings and troubles of David before he becomes king, where many of his camp, his women and children have been captured, and the men, his soldiers, women and children have been captured. And what can they do? And they turn on David. And the verse simply says that David found strength in the Lord his God. That's what's going on in this psalm. So verses 5 and 6 repeat and emphasize verses 1 and 2. For God alone, my soul waits in silence. Sometimes loud and noisy worship is what's needed. Sometimes we just need to get into the silent place with God and wait on him, because ultimately he is the source of strength. Verse 7, on God rests my deliverance and my honor, my mighty rock, my refuge is in God. And then verse 8, he moves out of the silence and he takes it to others. He wants to share this blessing. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. We're to find God in the silence when we absolutely need him, and find his blessing and strength and hope, and then share him with others. Interesting little interlude, verses 9 and 10. It's more than that, but can't do all the detail. Those who are of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. What the world thinks important, just forget it. In the balances, they go up, they're together lighter than a breath. Wealth, prosperity, poverty, these aren't the main things. Ultimately, they don't matter. Verse 10, put no confidence in extortion, set no vain hopes on robbery. Criminality is not a good idea. But then if riches increase, don't set your heart on them. Prosperity isn't going to save you either. Verse 11, once God has spoken, twice have I heard this. That's an emphatic way of saying it, that power belongs to God. And steadfast love belongs to you, O God, for you repay all according to their work. Don't look to wealth, whether criminally sourced or legally sourced. Ultimately, don't even look to other people for strength and support, though they will give it and God gives them to you for that reason. Ultimately, God alone, in God alone is our trust. Amen.